A boy reads a book about a mage defeating a demon and decides to be a mage of justice. In the present day, Rumia Tingel heals a local with her magic, while waiting for her best friend, Sistine Fibel. They are both students of the Elzano Imperial Academy, which is located in the city of Fejite. They are saddened that their favorite teacher, Huey Sensei, quit, but they are getting a new substitute teacher, and hope he is passionate about teaching. They meet Glenn Radars, who is a perverted young man and tries to harass Rumia sexually but gets blasted off by Sistine. Glenn is their new substitute teacher and he is a third-order mage, which is below the minimum requirements. But he is recommended by Professor Celica Arphonia. Sistine is infuriated about how incompetent he is. As she speaks, Glenn enters the girls' changing room and he is beaten up. Glenn was threatened to take the job by Celica. While he remembers this, he is challenged to a magic duel by Sistine. He accepts the duel and the winner gets the loser to do whatever she wants. He sets the rules of the duel as he is the challenger and he chooses Shock Bolt. He loses multiple times but keeps changing the rules each time as he refuses to honor their agreement. Glenn asks Sistine what the importance of magic is to society but she cannot answer. He tells her that magic is only used to kill. She slaps him and leaves. He spots Rumia in the lab trying to perform a magical circle spell and helps her with the spell by giving her mercury. She asks him about the past and he deflects the question with another question. She tells him she wants to learn magic and make it beneficial, as she has a debt to pay. She was banished from her and kidnapped by evil mages, but a mage of justice saved her. Sistine wants to learn magic as a way of honoring her grandfather. The next morning, Glenn apologizes to Sistine. He insults the whole class and tells them that they are idiots because they don't understand magic. He teaches them the Shock Bolt and demonstrates how it can take a different form if it is chanted differently. He tells them magic is not a principle, but an expression. He decides to take his job seriously and teach them how to be excellent magicians. Celica tells him that she is going away for a magic conference and teases him a little. Sistine believes he is a great teacher but also a scumbag, but Rumia tells her to give him a chance. A group called the Divine Wisdom plan to attack the school, while everyone is gone and believes Glenn would not be a problem. Glenn spots a man on his way to class and he is attacked by this man. Two men enter the classroom and tell them Glenn will not be coming. Sistine challenges them and they silence her with a warning shot. They are looking for Rumia. Rumia believes Glenn will save them, but they tell her he is dead. Rumia's real name is Ermiana and she is a princess that is supposed to be dead. One of the men tries to defile Sistine, just to break her spirit, and she begs him not to. Glenn arrives and he is attacked once again, but magic does not affect him. This is because he has an original spell called the Fool's World which cancels all spells around him. He also can't activate his magic due to this. He defeats the assailant in hand-to-hand using the Imperial military fighting style. Sistine thanks him and tells him that they captured Rumia. He contacts Celica and tells her the school is under attack. They figure out they have someone on the inside that told them how to disable the Academy's barrier. He asks for backup, but she cannot teleport to the school, as the teleporter has already been destroyed. She tells him she is on her way and tells him not to die. Sistine breaks down, but Glenn comforts her and promises to bring Rumia back and defeat the assaulters. Bone Golem summoned by Rake ends one of the muggers' life. Glenn defeats them with the help of Sistine with a powerful magic spell, but it makes him bleed. He is attacked by a Rake and Glenn pushes Sistine away. Sistine helps him with a dispel spell and he kills Rake. Rake reveals Glenn was a skilled mage killer working for the Imperial Court Mage Corps. Glenn is hurt in the end battle, but Sistine heals him with the last of her power and faints. Glenn goes after Rumia and finds out the mole is Huey Sensei. Huey wants to take Rumia away and blow up the academy. Glenn uses his blood to break the teleportation barrier even if costing his life. He passes out as he gets to the last barrier. Rumia reaches out to him and gives him her power. He breaks the spell and defeats Huey. He finds out Rumia is the princess and tells Celica he wants to watch the girls grow. Queen Alicia decides to visit Rumia at the academy and asks Zelos Dono to escort her. Zelos is the Grand Commander of the Imperial Guard, but he worries people will find out about Rumia's identity. The school holds a tournament and Glenn's class refuses to participate because they always lose. He assigns all the class to different events of the competition based on their abilities and vows to make them win. Glenn is only doing this to get the special bonus assigned to the instructor of the winning class. Hallie insults Glenn's class and Glenn bets his 3-month salary that they will win. Glenn trains the class and Sistine starts to like him. Rumia remembers the mage that rescued her. While she has dinner with Sistine's family, Rumia is happy she will get to see the queen and the competition begins. Glenn's class. Class 2 places 3rd in the flying race. Class 2 excels in the competition. Rumia wins the mental defense event, despite Glenn making her forget, and the queen gets happy to see Rumia. 2 mysterious people named Albert and Real spot Glenn. Real decides to attack him, but she is stopped by Albert, who tells her to focus on the mission. Their mission is to watch the Imperial Guards as they cannot be trusted with the Queen. Lynn decides to drop out of the transmutation competition because she does not want to disappoint her class. Glenn motivates her and tells her to participate. He transforms into Rumia and tells Lynn to study up on a special technique. The Queen meets Glenn and apologizes for his expulsion from the Corps. The Queen is happy to see her daughter, but Rumia denies being her daughter. Albert finds out the Queen has been detained by the guards and Real wants to attack them. Sistine tells Glenn to look for Rumia and finds out Glenn ate the sandwich. Rumia finds out that Glenn knows about her and she tells him why her mother abandoned her. She is the devil's incarnate, one of the gifted. She wants to be intimate with her mother but doesn't want to betray her new family. He tells her about his time in the Imperial Army and tells her to confess her feelings to her mother. The Imperial Guards arrest Rumia for trying to assassinate the Queen and Glenn is knocked out. As she is about to be executed, Glenn saves her. He assures her that the Queen will not execute her. They escape and Glenn contacts Celica for help, but she has been detained with the Queen. She tells him to find a way as he is attacked by Real. A conditional curse is placed on the Queen. Celica is told to follow the instructions of the Divine Wisdom or the Queen dies. Real attacks Glenn but is shot down by Albert. Albert tells Glenn that the Queen is being held by the Imperial Guards and they want to eliminate the princess. They decide to work together. Albert leads Class 2, while Glenn saves the Queen. Lynn wins the transmutation competition and Class 2 continues to win. The guards try to capture Glenn and kill the princess. Class 2 wins the tournament. Glenn gets surrounded by the guards, but it turns out Albert and Real use the self-illusion spell and switch places with Glenn and Rumia. Glenn meets the Queen and she orders the guards to kill Rumia. Glenn figures she is under a curse and breaks the curse. Glenn defeats Zelos as he realizes the spell did not activate because of Glenn's Fool Arcana. The Queen apologizes to Rumia while Albert and Real try to capture the Queen's maid, Alina, who works for Divine Wisdom, but she escapes. Glenn thanks his friends and they tell him about Alina. Glenn reveals to Rumia that he was the one that saved her, and the class celebrates their victory. Glenn starts to teach Sistine hand-to-hand combat and she wonders why. He tells her she needs to grow stronger if she wants to protect Rumia, and she tells him that she is ready to learn. Glenn waits for Rumia every day because he fears for her safety. He is attacked by Real, who was transferred as a student to protect Rumia. Real overdoes it during a class practice and everyone becomes scared of her. The girls take Real out for lunch and she bonds with the whole class. The class takes a field trip. Albert becomes the protector of Rumia and tells Glenn to be careful of Real. They have fun on their field trip, but Real is shocked to see Glenn having so much fun. Rhea asks Glenn why he left the Corps and gets angry at him. She wonders why he does not want to be with her. Meanwhile, the Divine Wisdom prepares a terrible plan. The class heads to the alchemy lab, but they are all tired. They arrive at the lab and are given a tour. Rumia wonders if it is ethical to experiment with life, but Sistine clears her doubt. She explains the project Revive Lie but is interrupted by the tour guide and Glenn. Glenn tells them the project is sealed away because it had too many casualties. The tour guide worries that the Divine Wisdom stole the research, but Glenn soothes him. Sistine asks what the requirements are for the project's success, and the tour guide tells her. The girls get worried about Real, but she rejects their help. She runs away and cries. Glenn tells the girls not to abandon Real and goes after her. The maid Alina appears and attacks Albert in an evenly matched battle. Real's brother suddenly appears and tells her to betray Glenn and the girls, but Glenn arrives just in time. Real stabs Glenn with her sword and captures Rumia, while Sistine can't do anything. Alina manages to escape, and Albert tries to revive Glenn with the help of Sistine. Glenn stops breathing and Sistine gives him CPR. Real ends up telling Rumia that Glenn is dead. Glenn wakes up and thanks Albert for saving his life, but Albert tells him Sistine helped. Glenn asks about the current situation. Glenn gets angry at Albert for using Rumia as bait. Albert feels bad and decides to help Glenn, even if it involves killing Ree. But Glenn scolds him. Albert punches Glenn for leaving them and gives him his gun. Albert decides to save the princess and eliminate Ree if he must. The Project Revive lie is about to be activated using Rumia. Glenn and Albert arrive after the latter placed a tracker on a leaner. Sistine tells the class what has happened and they decide to look for Rumia, but decide to trust Glenn, and Albert fights a hybrid. Glenn confronts Real, but she refuses to listen to him. He proves to her that her brother is dead. Glenn destroys the project and tells Real that she is a product of the project. Glenn and Real are attacked by other versions of Real, and Glenn protects her while telling her to live for something. Real attacks and kills her copies. When Rumia and Real return to the class, the Project Revive Life ritual is activated. Albert tells Glenn that Sistine looks like Sarah Silvers. Helena speaks to the Grand Master of the Divine Wisdom, and he tells her to deal with anyone that stands in their way. Sistine meets Celica at the library, who advises her to follow her path. Celica decides to visit the underground labyrinth. Glenn thanks Sistine for saving his life. Meanwhile, Leos arrives at the academy as a guest instructor claims to be in love with Sistine. Celica worries about Leo's intentions. Leos is an excellent teacher but teaches the students military-grade lessons. Leos takes Sistine for a walk, but Glenn and Rumia decide to spy on Sistine. Leos proposes, but Sistine rejects him because of her promise to her grandfather. Sistine tells Leos that Glenn is her fiancé. Leos decides to have a duel against Glenn. The duel involves the whole class. Albert tells Glenn about Angel's dust, which is used for mind control, being back in the city, and tells him not to interfere. Glenn tells Albert that he will not let Sarah die for anything. Glenn remembers Sarah, and turns out the duel is a setup. Hallie explains the rule of the duel, and the duel begins. Leo's class begins to dominate after teaching them an important tactic in mage combat before the duel. The class uses 2-man cells to counter the class's 4 3-man cells. Glenn results in dirty tactics just to win the duel, but it's a tie. Glenn challenges Leos to a one-on-one duel, but Sistine slaps him, stating she is not a prize to be won. Sistine is angry at Glenn, but Rumia believes there is a reason for his actions and suggests she talks to him. 5 people end up dead as a result of Angel's dust. Leos wants to marry Sistine just to become the head of the family. Glenn tells Sistine his story and about Sarah. He tells her that he is doing all this because he does not want her to give up on her dream. Leos shows up, and despite threats from Glenn, he tells Sistine about Glenn's past. He talks about how Glenn was a killer and they fight, but Leos defeats Glenn with ease. Leos blackmails Sistine into marrying him. Glenn leaves the academy and does not show up for the duel. Sistine agrees to marry Leos in a week. Real wants to kill Leos, but Rumia stops her, believing Glenn will do something about it. As Sistine is about to get married, Glenn appears and stops the wedding, leaving with Sistine. Glenn figured she was being blackmailed and has a plan to defeat Leos. Glenn and Sistine end up being attacked by people infected with Angel's dust. The students also end up surrounded by the infected, but the Mage Corps arrive and save them. Sistine is attacked, but Glenn saves her and gets shocked as he kills them. He remembers what happened to Sarah and becomes vicious, killing them all. Sistine is afraid of him, and Leos arrives. Glenn finally realizes that he is not Leos but Justine, a former member of the Mage Corps, who reveals that Leos is dead. Glenn tells Sistine to run as he prepares to take Justine on, and Justine reveals he is after the Akashic records, which will grant him the power to rule the world, but does not want it till Glenn is dead. When Justine is about to kill Glenn, Sistine saves him. Together they defeat Justine, who still manages to escape, but Sistine is near death after reaching her limit. Glenn takes Sistine home. Glenn tells Albert about Justine's intention, and Celica leaves to explore the underground labyrinth. Glenn finally accepted his role as a teacher.